think the first thing we have to understand is change is hard, because the brain is an energy conserving organ. It's trying to keep you, its biggest function is to keep you alive and safe. And so the brain is going, I need to keep some resources and some energy in reserve in case, your life or, you experience a physical or a social threat. So your brain is doing that outside of your conscious awareness. What I love about your story, Charles, is that you have an intention to change. So you see that there's a reward in you changing your behavior. And I always talk about an equation where the reward has to be greater than the threat of change to equal action. So unless people see that there's going to be benefit to themselves personally or to the people around them, then the brain's going to say, hey, just keep doing what you've always done. There's lots and lots of pathways. You've got habits around that. I think if we take that into the command and control approach of leadership, that was something that was taught to leaders for so many years. And to just say to someone, you need to stop using that approach, that's going to be really tough, because they may not have knowledge of alternative ways of leading, or they may not see, well, what are the benefits? I'm getting results doing this. And I've spoken to CEOs that said, I get results. And I say to them, but what if you got better results by doing it in a different way? And they've never considered that. They kind of go, oh. And so I think it comes back to you having some motivation to change a habit, because habits can take between 28 and I think it's 342 days to develop. And depending on how complex it is, obviously you have to find ways to, stay on your goal track, to notice the successes and the rewards, and to continue to adjust your goals as you learn more.
I have with me today a very interesting and enlightening guest who is going to come join us all the way from Brisbane in Australia. Now, she has got a mission, and this mission is to change the world, one brain at a time. And she aims to do it through the marketplace by connecting and inviting 1 million current and emerging leaders to join her vision to amplify the impact brain science can do to reshape your life, your business, and really your world. Now, I'm a big believer about invitations because invitations can change your life. How you respond to an invitation can change the course of your life. And so her name is Linda Ray. She's a Neuroscience Leadership GURU, I call her. And she's the founder of NeuroCapability. And her passion is to see how we do business as leaders in the marketplace, because I believe very strongly that the next frontier in this 21st century would be brain science in the marketplace. So let's just invite Linda to join us. She's coming to us live from Brisbane. So Linda, please come in.
Hello, Charles. It's lovely to be here.
I must tell you, 30 years ago when I was introduced to this whole concept of neuroplasticity, neuroscience, I put it aside, Linda, because it had the prefix neuro. And as a plastic surgeon, I told myself, what on earth has neuro got to do with my life and my work? And as usual, I'm always honored to have a neuroscientist with me. And every time I have that, I have this with me. It's a model of the brain. I got it from next door from my neurologist friend. And I've always wanted this to hug my brain in front of a neuroscientist, because I can tell you one thing, if there's any organ that I have left out in the closet, would be my brain.
mm,
because it helps me earn, it helps me live, it helps me bring food on the table for my family.
mm,
And I can tell you, it's one organ that we neglect, and
mm.
definitely today is going to be very inspiring. So once again, thank you for joining us on Heart Talk. And let me just off the bat ask you, how did you get into this field, Linda? Tell us.
It was a bit by accident, Charles. My first career was in social work, and I did a lot of, pretty groundbreaking work in trying to address social issues that were occurring in Australia, and I loved that, and it was great. And that I stumbled into leadership development and running leadership programs and coaching and doing change management in organisations, and I loved that, and I thought, well, I could make a difference here. And then in 2006, I stumbled across a colleague of mine, and he said, "Have you looked at any of this neuroscience?" And I said, "What do you mean, neuroscience? No, I
There
finished
you
science
go.
at school. I don't want to ever look at that again." He said, "No, I think you should, because I think it'll give you some answers to things that and some support for some of the things you believe." And so I kind of did it to humor him, not really because I thought there would be anything in it. And when I started to explore, I went, oh my gosh, this is the missing link. This is what makes sense to me. And so I started to read, and I did some postgraduate studies. I went to lots of conferences, and I've got more books on neuroscience than you could imagine. And it dawned on me that this was really powerful stuff. And so I started to kind of bring it into some of my leadership development programs. And I'll never forget one day, I decided I'll start off with that. And the people said to me, "Linda, we've never heard this before. This is amazing. We don't care what else you had for the plan for the day. Can you just tell us this stuff?" And I went, okay. And so this is in the mid 2000s, so the 2006 right through to about 2008, when I realized I need to actually focus my entire attention on this. And that's where NeuroCapability was born, because I saw that there was like you said, I carried my brain around in my head for about 40 years, never paid it any attention. And I always, when I speak at conferences, I say, hands up, people who have never paid attention to their brain. And pretty much everyone in the audience puts their hand up. And we're not taught about our brain at school. We're not taught in our university courses. And so I decided I have to get this out to people. And so I developed a diploma of neuroscience of leadership, which is in Australia a very hard task to get programs accredited.
Sure.
And I started to deliver that online to people. And what was so exciting about it was it made sense to people. And I guess one of my superpowers is the ability to translate science into practical, what does this mean for how I manage myself? What does it mean for how I interact with others? What does it mean for change? And it was really lovely. Even in those early days, people were saying to me, "This has changed my life." And I didn't develop it wasn't a personal development program. It was a program to teach people to be the boss of their brain and to understand that the brain drives every aspect of our behavior, both inside work and outside work.
Okay,
And
let me just let me just I mean, it's so exciting the way you're taking us on this journey. But like anything in life, like for me as a plastic surgeon, when I do cleft lip surgery and I got a 3-month-old baby in front of me, and I've just seen last week, a girl who's 22 years old now, and how she has evolved over the years. It was through cleft lip surgery that I found myself, and that the whole art of creativity and the whole art of how you mold and how you adore this whole concept. Now, tell me, in your early years, and I've got it written here that you studied at Middlesex University and you were exposed to this whole philosophy and science of neuroscience. How did that affect you personally? What area in your life did you find? Because I never heard of the word mindfulness before, except 2 years ago. I never heard of what I know now today than I did 2, 3 years ago. But in the process of getting exposed to it, It was certainly revealing so many dark areas in my own life that were hidden somewhere in my brain that I would have taken to heaven with me without even opening the door. And because it's only human that we don't sometimes like to get in, and we're quite
Yes.
happy living in the darkness of our soul.
Mm,
So, which area, right from the beginning,
mm.
did you find that this door started, turning certain areas in
Yes.
your life and changed you? Talk to us
Absolutely.
about that. How personal was that to you?
Incredibly personal, and it impacted every aspect of my life, both inside work and outside work. And I think one of the things that I knew about myself is I come from a long line of warriors with who tend to suffer, a little bit of anxiety, and if something goes wrong, we can completely lose the plot. What I learned through my understanding neuroscience and understanding how emotions are kind of experienced in the brain was how to self-regulate and how to stay calm in the moment. And it's not something you can just switch on and it happens straight away. It takes a whole rewiring of your brain to be able to, stay calm and notice what's happening from a feeling and emotional level, and then get curious about it. So I guess one of the massive things for me was to really adopt a curious mindset. But it didn't only just change myself, it changed how I delivered training. I kind of went, oh my gosh, why didn't I understand this before? Getting people to all introduce themselves at the beginning of a session when they're unfamiliar with each other, it really poses a threat to a lot of people. And yet that was what I just typically did, right through to my parenting. So my son was born in 2000 and my daughter in 1998. And they were a perfect experiment, these two growing, developing brains, to help them understand their brain from a really early age, which was fantastic. My daughter, she used to come to me and say, Mummy, and she knew this was kind of like a model of the brain. She goes, I think I'm about to flip my lid, Mummy. I need some help. And so that stuff was really lovely. And my son, I tell this story a lot because it's always a warning to parents. If you're going to learn this stuff and teach it to your children, it will come back at you. So my son, he was behaving in a way that wasn't so great. I think he was about 14 years old. And I said, Reese, this is not okay. What's going on? He said, oh, Mum, you know that my prefrontal cortex isn't fully formed until I'm 25. What do you expect? You've always told me that. And so you have to be careful with that. But I think I never practiced mindfulness until I learned the power of it and meditation. I was a workaholic. I would work incredible hours, and yet we know from all the science that you're not productive for that long. So I learned the value of taking brain breaks, having naps, sleep hygiene, even, thinking about what you eat and making sure that you exercise, because your brain is, as you said, many of us don't look after it, and we need to look after it. So it profoundly affected and changed everything that I did in my life. And, I say to people who do our programs, word of warning, once you start hearing and learning about your brain, you will never think about your brain in the same way. You will be forever changed. And it's
Yeah.
funny, at the end of our courses, people will say, how you said that at the beginning, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. I just wish I was your neighbor because, and I keep saying that to all the neuroscientists because I think I would have been a very clever, person. When I say clever within inverted commas on how to handle life as it is. And, the fundamental thing here, which I find in my own life, 40 years in the marketplace, is that we are brought up. I was brought up with a lot of emotional baggage that becomes, part of your life stream. I mean, if you were to do a blood test, I think one of it is to just find out what is this emotional makeup of this person, because, and it takes a lifetime to really change it. Talk to us about certain areas, very personal, very specific areas that you found that were totally had a better control of your life than you did. and then you just realize that you just got to let it go. Because when I'm hearing people talk today about rewiring and retraining and it's as if it's like ordering some menu in a shop. How does it really happen, Linda? Give us a bit of taste of this neuroscience plot.
Um, I'll give a parenting example because I think there's probably a lot of people, everyone's been a son or a daughter or maybe a parent themselves.
Okay, talk to
Uh,
me then.
so I came from a very loving family, so I was very blessed. However, the way in which my family dealt with bad behavior or conflict was to hit us. So we were, physical punishment. And when I had my own two children, I really knew that was part of my memories and the way that I just kind of saw parenting happen. And I knew I didn't want to do that. But it's very hard when you've been brought up with a particular pattern of behavior to just go, okay, I'm going to do something different. And I caught myself, when they were getting into that toddler age where I just wanted to give them a bit of a whack. And I had to really stop and go, okay, this is the past behavior that you don't want to be repeating for your children. You want your children to learn to negotiate and to be able to talk through issues and challenges and problems. And so that's a very personal story. And I think,
Yes.
and I never did hit them, and they've turned out into the most marvelous human beings. I mean, I'm biased on their mother, but they are both of them making a difference in the world. My son is in human HR, and my daughter is a social worker, and they're very
Wow,
passionate
congratulations.
about the work. And they're both taking the brain science into the work that they do. My daughter in trauma-informed counselling, and my son in using psychological safety in his workplace.
No, that's wonderful
So,
to hear. I
yeah,
mean, that's beautiful because you were able to stop. I'm learning how to stop because I'm on a different page,
yeah,
and every time my children are all doctors, and and one of them is 37, the other one is 28, going on 30, and so I have struggled with this part of life, and that is how you have been brought up,
yes,
and you tend to start reflecting it the same way,
mm,
and I want to lead you on to this whole concept, which I want to spend some time with you, about the
mm,
power of thought, because
mm,
you wake up every day and you don't wake up with a blank page, you wake up with thoughts in your mind,
mm,
and these thoughts then become so real into emotions, and they become a language that you not only talk to yourself, but you take it to the marketplace, and the people around
yeah,
you are the first
mm,
to hit you. So
mm,
when you are talking about you can't change what you do not know. I keep telling myself all
yeah,
the time.
yes,
So when you know that you are reacting in a different way, which you shouldn't.
mm,
I'm
mm,
always, spiritually, I always quote this Apostle Paul who says, "For what I hate to do, I do." And it
mm,
all comes down to, the spiritual context of sin. But anyway, so talk to us. And so if somebody is listening in right now and
mm,
relates to me having not been able to change some of my
mm,
hardened ways,
mm,
how does one reprogram and rewire? I mean, I can't afford to go for courses at this time of my life.
yeah,
But
yeah.
but when I talk to
Yeah.
Professor Selena, she says there is hope, Charles.
There is both. And I think that's really important. You said you've come to it later in your life. It doesn't matter when you come to a new idea. The brain is neuroplastic. We can learn new things. We never stop learning. And I think it was in the decade of the brain in the 2000s that neuroscientists only started to feel confident to publish papers that had the word neuroplasticity in it, because there was a lot of, woo-ha
Sure.
around that stuff. I think the first thing we have to understand is change is hard, because the brain is an energy conserving organ. It's trying to keep you, its biggest function is to keep you alive and safe. And so the brain is going, I need to keep some resources and some energy in reserve in case, your life or, you experience a physical or a social threat. So your brain is doing that outside of your conscious awareness. What I love about your story, Charles, is that you have an intention to change. So you see that there's a reward in you changing your behavior. And I always talk about an equation where the reward has to be greater than the threat of change to equal action. So unless people see that there's going to be benefit to themselves personally or to the people around them, then the brain's going to say, hey, just keep doing what you've always done. There's lots and lots of pathways. You've got habits around that. I think if we take that into the command and control approach of leadership, that was something that was taught to leaders for so many years. And to just say to someone, you need to stop using that approach, that's going to be really tough because they may not have knowledge of alternative ways of leading, or they may not see, well, what are the benefits? I'm getting results doing this. And I've spoken to CEOs that said, I get results. And I say to them, but what if you got better results by doing it in a different way? And they've never considered that. They kind of go, oh. And so I think it comes back to you having some motivation to change a habit, because habits can take between 28 and I think it's 342 days to develop. And
that's powerful.
Depending on how complex it is, obviously you have to find ways to stay on your goal track, to notice the successes and the rewards, and to continue to adjust your goals as you learn more.
Yeah, this is beautiful, and so thank you for that, Linda. Because for everyone who's listening in, there's always a ray of hope, and that's why your surname is Ray, because there's always a silver lining to every part of life, and how do we end up telling ourselves that we lived a beautiful life, if not challenging, and I want to take you through this whole concept now, or from the thought language to emotions, as you were talking about, and how do we make it into a language, into the marketplace. And I think that for many, many years as a medical professional, 40 years now going on, we have lived and I have worked in what is called a flea mindset. In other words, I have been always programmed with a fixed mindset. You see, like for example, this brain belongs to my neurologist friend. And when I founded the consultation on marketplace mindfulness in April of this year, and we're inviting 14 international speakers to come and talk about this whole concept of marketplace mindfulness. And so I spoke to him and I said, listen, I want to have a podcast with you about the mind. And he said, sorry, but I only treat disease. And you know what I mean? If it's on dementia and Alzheimer's and all that, I'm happy, but don't talk to me about the mind. And I think this is the price we pay as medical professionals. This flea mindset. So I've lived in that bubble, and if you take off the lid, which the test shows and the video shows, I'm still in that same flea mindset, and my offspring hopefully will break out of it and realize. And so I'm on this mind flow ergonomics, which you talk so much about. And that is, how do we really a unit of energy in what we do? Paying attention requires energy. Everything that we do requires energy. And yet the brain is trying to conserve it. So we've got this nick and tuck going on, which is like a nip and tuck in my field. And so I got this whole concept of flea mindset to a genius mind flow. Because if the mind is not flowing, we're always stuck in our old default mode.
Yes.
So give us some thoughts about this, because this is, for me, frontier medicine. I just wish that psychology and the art of neuroscience is part of training of every medical professional, especially in today's world.
You and me both, and I'm hoping I'll see that happen in this lifetime. It's another kind of area that I'm particularly interested in, and not just medical professions, but other professionals as well. I think if you think about mindset, and Carol Dweck really talked about the concept of fixed mindset and growth mindset. Fixed mindset is where, people really don't think they can change, and they get stuck in a rut, I guess. But interestingly, when we're born as children, if we were born with a fixed mindset, we would give up. When we took our first attempt at standing up and holding onto a table and we fell over, we go, oh, that's too hard, I don't think I'll do that. So we were born with a growth mindset, but through our experiences, maybe in our family and our workplaces, we can move more into a fixed mindset. You're talking about a free mindset, and Carol Dwight talks about a growth mindset where people are open to learning and making mistakes. But there's also another mindset, and I'll come back to your point, that I think is really important in this 21st century age that we're living in, and it's called a benefit mindset. Mm-hmm. And a benefit mindset is thinking about not only that you're able to learn and grow and become a better human being, but all of your actions then look at, and how does what I do contribute to making the world a better place? So I think that's where we're moving into, right. And we're seeing a lot of young people, concerned about climate change, and this is that benefit mindset. They're really wanting to work for places which are environmentally responsible. In terms of energy and attention, I think one of the really interesting things that I learned about myself very early on when I started to look at neuroscience was I was hopeless at focusing my attention. I have what I call bright, shiny object syndrome. So I'd be, say, right, okay, Linda, I'm going to do this. And then I go, oh, there's a pop-up. Oh, there's an email. I better check that email. Or, oh, and there's a really interesting research paper. And, oh, that's led me to a YouTube over here. And so my attention was, I wasn't in control of my attention. I was just following flying little butterflies all over the place, the little bright, shiny objects. And what I realized was that's why I was a workaholic. It was because I actually wasn't focusing my attention. So I was having to, to get through the work I was supposed to do, work many more hours than was necessary because my attention was going all over the place. And so one of the things that I kind of started to think is maybe there's a different intelligence that we haven't thought about. We saw Daniel Goleman talk about emotional and social intelligence, but I believe there is another intelligence called attentional intelligence. And that's the capacity to know where our attention is, to notice what's happening for us from an emotional and feeling level, and to be able to also understand what's going on in our head. What are the thoughts? You mentioned before that we wake up in the morning and we have thoughts. And if you think about what people are doing right now, it's very bad for our brain. At conferences, I'll say, hands up, people that look at their phone and read their emails before their feet even touch the floor. Pretty much everyone puts their hand up. So we're waking up, and there's a beautiful half an hour where we actually shouldn't focus on anything except for ourselves and, just having a peaceful start to our day. But very few people do that. And it sets us up for kind of being in threat mode. If the first thing you do is you read an email from your boss, kind of berating you, or you look at the news and you hear a tragic story, you're already setting yourself up for a day where you're going, what else is going to go wrong? And your brain then starts to look for evidence, confirming evidence of what's going to go wrong, and you notice the good things that might be happening around you.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, if you have a twin, I'm one of them, because because everything that you have spoken and said, so beautifully is real. You see, and this is the thing about neuroscience. You can't run away from it. There's nothing fake about the brain. Your body doesn't lie to you. The body tells you the truth. In fact, in my profession, in plastic surgery, I always tell people when they come and see me, when it comes to the face and all that, I said, listen to what your skin is telling you. I'm not a skin specialist, but it's telling you something. And I think, the whole art of listening and paying attention, and sometimes because we are the way we are wired, I can just flip like that at any moment, which I did just now, about 2 hours before coming on live with you. And then you realize that, oh gosh, I couldn't control that moment. And I think that it is really a continual exercise to be always paying attention to the moment. It's energy, of course, but it's good energy. It's called ergonomics. If we can learn how to handle the mind, then we will always think in the positive side of what things are going to turn out. And I think that you're really onto something really big, because with the kind of world we're living in, it's changing so constantly. It's like trying to live on a dancing floor that's moving. You know what I mean? Try do a waltz with me and a quick step with me, and the floor is
Mm,
moving. You just can't
yeah,
get your steps right.
yeah.
And I think this is a challenge that you all of us face in the marketplace.
Mm, mm. And look, I think we have to be really mindful that people have been through a very difficult period with, the pandemic. And, given that the brain sees change as a threat, that's what we're programmed is, and some people see it more of a threat than other people. Some people are more change, kind of have a greater change appetite. I was talking to one of our students. I was doing a study call, and she works in a large hospital here. And she said that for the next quarter, they've just been given 11 projects to complete, as well as their business as usual. And she said, everyone's just gone into complete overwhelm. And so I think, when you think about employers, we need to have realistic expectations about what people can do and how they can perform. And I remember when my son was probably about 8 years old, he got appendicitis, and I took him to the hospital, the emergency department, and I said, I think my son has appendicitis. And they kind of looked at me and went, no, he'd be in a lot more pain if he had appendicitis. I said, my son has a high pain tolerance. And they said, oh, no, no. And I said, look, there is seriously something wrong with him. And when they did an ultrasound, they found out he had the biggest appendix they'd seen in a child his age. It was about to explode.
Uh-huh.
And so it was like, we need to operate on him. But in the meantime, a crash happened, and so the operating rooms were taken up by people that had been seriously injured. So the doctor didn't operate on him till 12 o'clock at night. And I remember saying to the nurse, I said, please tell me that this doctor that is going to be operating on my son has had a rest at some point. And she said, oh, yes, he has. And because I know what a tired brain is one that leads you to making mistakes. And I'm sure an whatever that term is, you would know, is not a difficult.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
that's it. It's not a difficult operation. And so there's lots of habits that surgeon would have had around that. But, we're asking people to do hard things, and we're paying people to think, but we're not respecting that attention is a limited resource. And I think, quite frankly, the biggest message I'm hearing from people is, I'm overwhelmed, in any setting, in the health settings, in schools, in the mining sector, people are overwhelmed and
I
they're
think yeah.
exhausted.
I want to come to the power of thought and then move to emotions, because I think emotions can be very contagious, and as you rightly mentioned that command and control has been my belt that I've been
Mm,
wearing for the past 40 years, always
mm,
wanting to be in control of a situation. That's surgery. You're
mm.
in control and you take it home too. You think that the people in the household are all part of your nurses in the team. Give me
Yeah.
this, give me that. Put this in order, instead of trust and inspire.
Mm,
Because if we don't have it right, then the trust and the opposite of that will be toxic. So
mm,
you
mm,
talk about psychologically safe places to work.
mm,
I think it begins with ourselves first. I mean, do I feel
mm,
safe with myself to
mm,
go out into the marketplace? How am I
mm.
impacting my loved ones?
Yeah.
I know that I could have done differently. So, can you just take us into this whole space of amplifying impact first within ourselves and then
Mm,
going it out into the marketplace? Because I think that's your passion today, is how is a human-centered, safe place to work.
mm,
And that's
mm.
ergonomics, you see, at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
Okay. Um, yeah, that's a really big question. If I think about impact is around what is the impact I have on the people around me. And I think a lot of people go through life not appreciating that every interaction you have with another human being impacts them either positively or negatively. You know,
Absolutely.
if you were in the theatre and you start shouting at one of the theatre nurses, well, that's going to make them not feel great. So that will negatively impact. If you, say, great work and thank you very much, that was really well done, it completely shifts their mindset. They start feeling proud of their work and this person appreciates me. So I think we misunderstand. And I believe like that most leaders want to do a good job. Most people want to be good people. But sometimes we don't understand that the way that we're doing things isn't necessarily having a great impact on us. So we really need to start with self. And in our advanced diploma of Neuroscience of Leadership, the program starts with self-regulation, because we need to learn how to regulate our own emotions and to understand what's going on in our own brain and body, so that we can adjust that. There's no point in if you don't start with yourself first, then you're never going to have success with this. So
Absolutely.
it sounds like you've been on that journey. And then once we've mastered that, then we can start looking at how can we support other people? How can we ensure that every person is treating each other with respect, and that we're building trust within teams, and that we're building a psychologically safe workplace for people to be in. And so I think that that's really critical. And one of the interesting things is I still see so many companies doing engagement surveys. And engagement is a lag indicator. The degree to which you feel engaged in your workplace, whether you love being there or you don't love being there, is impacted by how psychologically safe you feel at work. If you don't feel psychologically safe, if you don't feel appreciated and respected, that you can speak up and speak out, then you're not going to be engaged. You're just going to be going through the motions. And so I think really when I think about what I need to change from a process and systems perspective, is we're still using processes and systems that were developed many, many decades ago. If you think about performance management approaches, I think they're pretty much all rubbish. Really, we're asking people to work in teams, but then we're assessing their performance individually. And sometimes we only do it once a year. And that makes no sense to me. You think about even the way that we recruit people and how we try to retain people. Again, that's a system and process that we've done in the same way for many, many years, and maybe there's some different ways that we could do that stuff. At the end of the day, the most important thing for me and how I've built my business is to have impact. And so, I could make a lot of money being a consultant and just working, in a small little niche area. I'm probably one of the lowest paid CEOs in the world, I think. And in fact, when I was growing my business, there was periods I didn't even pay myself because I was so committed and so passionate about this work. But the ultimate impact, if we can be building neurocapability within organizations, then we're actually sending people home at the end of the day in a positive mindset. And it means they're going to be better partners, they're going to be better parents, they're going to experience less health conditions. We know cardiovascular issues are massive, mental health issues are massive. So at the end of the day, that is my mission in life, is to change the world one brain at a time. And I want to build, this community of people that are, and we already have that. We have hundreds of people that have been through our programs and are now influencing the people that they work with, whether that's in an organization or whether they're consultants working with an organization, because we need to do something differently. All of the evidence and research is there that a lot of people are not having a great time at work.
Yeah, I mean, this is beautifully said from the founder itself. And I believe that, the power of visioneering. I mean, if there's no vision, the people perish. And so it begins with our own lives first. So I'm very much more on the personal journey that takes the whole process into the marketplace. Because at the end of the day, if we don't win, and when I say win, I mean within inverted commas, our own self. We will end up like the tragedy of an unfinished work. In fact, the greatest gift in life is the ability to earn, and I think work-life spirit balance is something that we all treasure. So, on that note, now, how do people get in touch with you, Linda, and your team?
They can go on our website, www.neurocapability.com.au. And we have a newsletter. We do, we send out a lot of free stuff. There's lots of free stuff on our website. And if people are interested in talking to us about programs or about psychological safety, then we'd love to have a conversation with people. And we'd love you to join us on our mission to change the world one brain at a time.
No, I think it's a powerful vision. As a visionary myself, I think that to think big is to start the ball rolling, and I think we are on the right track, because at the end of the day, we only have this one life to live it well, and we can do it not alone but together. So on that note, I want to encourage, thank you for connecting and bringing this invitation to all of us. We hope that we can continue to build. And I was telling Penny the other day, two brains at one time will be able to tango. And
That's lovely.
and I said that, if music be the food of love, play on, let it play on. So on that note, Linda, listen, it's been wonderful having you on Hard Talk. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation with us,
Very
and
much so.
and I hope that we'll have a time again. As I said, this year will be the second Asia Pacific consultation on marketplace mindfulness, and I think that we hope that we'll be able to meet in person and have you as one of our faculty speakers, so that we can grow this vision and make it real. Okay,
That
so
would be lovely.
that'll be lovely.
Asia is one of my favorite places in the world to visit.
Yeah, man. And I just want to end on this note about Asia, and that I believe that the mnemonics carry a lot, where A is about authenticity, S is about sustainability, I is about integrity, and the last A is about availability. If we don't make ourselves available,
Yeah.
then we will miss it, and
Yes.
that's the missing link.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love it.